The following news flash is brought to you by the Lone Star Lowdown, providing your daily bulletins for the commodities market. Today in history, news updates, and the inside scoop into the tides of the alternative. Markets for Friday, February 26, 2016 are currently trading with gold at $1,222.09 an ounce, silver $14.69 an ounce, Texas crude $32.78 a barrel, and Bitcoin is currently sitting at about 433 U.S. currency. Today in history, the year 1848. The Communist Manifesto is anonymously published by the Workers' Educational Association at 46 Liverpool Street in the City of London. Later accredited to Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, the Communist Manifesto has had profound influence on the political power structures of the world. The Communist Manifesto was first published today in history. In recent news, the State Department released another 1,500 pages of Clinton's emails, including 88 documents that were upgraded to the lowest classification level on its website Friday, tallying up the total amount thus far made public to roughly 48,500 pages. The last batch of 55,000 work-related emails is scheduled to be released on Monday in accordance with a court order. Though the 88 documents that were deemed to be classified at the confidential level, which is the lowest national security classification category, the State Department did claim that none of those emails were marked classified at the moment that Hillary Clinton had sent them. Of the 1.1 million migrants who registered as asylum seekers or refugees in Germany in 2015, a whopping 13% did not turn up to the reception centers to which they had been directed. This authorized government admission came up after a previous calculation which suggested the number of untracked refugees could be as high as 600,000. These numbers clearly reveal how the Dublin Agreement, whereby asylum seekers are supposed to be sent back to the first European Union country they entered through, has become unenforceable. With the spree of refugee-related rapes, assaults, and crime, coupled with German backlash in the form of nationalism and the desecration of mosques on the rise, it seems that Germany is in for some tough times. The IRS has announced that approximately 390,000 additional taxpayer accounts were potentially accessed via identity theft hackers. Internal Revenue will begin notifying these taxpayers by mail beginning February 29th. Notices will be sent including free identity theft protection services with identity protection pins. The IRS is also checking into those affected taxpayers' social security numbers for extra security and will be sharing that information with tax state authorities. This has been your lowdown for February 26, 2016.
It's 11:59 at Radio Free America, and this is Uncle Sam with music and the truth until dawn. Right now, I got a few words for some of our brothers and sisters in the occupied zone. The chair is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I have a joke for you.
Okay.
The government in this town is excellent and uses your tax dollars efficiently.
You thought you'd see it coming. The moment's here. They come with your food.
Bitcoin is immune from attack almost completely. But Bitcoin, you'll actually gain far more from using that computing power to generate Bitcoin.
There's a system approaching perfection. It's in time for it to disappear. There's a system approaching perfection. It's in time for it to disappear.
We'll walk deeper into the belly of the beast. If it means I'm able to further limit reckless government spending. I mean, I have so many ideas. Some are simple, like take down traffic lights and eliminate the post office. The bigger ones will be tougher, like bring all of this crumbling to the ground.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Crypto Show. Hi. And I'm, I can't remember his name now. Wait, what? You know what I'm trying to imitate, right? The Chicago Cubs announcer. I can't even remember. I totally failed that one.
Is that a football team?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Crypto Show, a show dedicated to understanding the promise of currency, technology, and liberty in the pursuit.
Previous statement may not actually be true, or it's based in drug-induced fantasy.
Drug-induced fantasy. In the pursuit of a free society. And if you believe like we do, that such a society can and should exist, well, then join us. Why don't you? As we pursue. Hold on. Then join us as we parade through a world unbound by convention, a world sketched by the beauty of the human artist. Because each and every one of you listening right now is that artist. So for the next 2 hours, guys, let go of your most sacred system of thought and entertain the possibility that maybe, just maybe, everything you've been told about currency, technology, and yes, even that dirty, dirty little word, anarchy, is only one part of an ever-expanding, ever-possible, complex universe of ideas, one that we simply refuse to explore. So what do you say, listeners? Let's do some universe exploring tonight and have some fun while we do it.
I figured you should think about what you were saying.
Probably. So. What is your mom Trebek?
I don't know. It's just this thing.
Hey, if the moon were made of cheese, would you eat it? I know I would. Hey. I can't remember his name. Harry Carey. A la Will Ferrell. That's who I'm doing. And I'm sure everyone is cracking up, busting a gut at how incredible my impression was, how spontaneous and artful my delivery was, because I'm just that funny and comedic. Anyway, great way to start off the show.
Funny looking.
Funny looking for sure. Tons of funny, in fact. So funny I'm round. But we are back. We made it alive in case you hadn't been updated from in Acapulco, Mexico, which is not midway up the Pacific coast as I had always thought, but is in fact basically at the southern tip of Mexico. So if you lose your passport and need to drive back, keep in mind that is a 20-plus hour drive just to the Texan border. And just past the Nuevo Leon border, you might just get stopped and shaken down for money by the military guys. So keep that in mind. If you're ever traveling in Mexico, go by plane.
Yeah.
Stay in the safe major cities. And don't mess with the cartels.
And if you do drive, keep your large amounts of money somewhere else. Don't flash your cash. Let them think you only have a few bucks, so they'll only steal that from you. Exactly.
And we didn't exactly learn that lesson the hard way. I mean, we did have to pay about the equivalent of $30 total between the three of us, but we did have more cash sitting up at the dashboard that was sort of our petty cash. And we were lucky we didn't lose all of that. Not that it would have killed us, but we definitely could have been hurt more. So as Danny said, definitely find clever little spots to hide it, because they will look and they will find and they will take. And that is the nature of agents of the state. Well, we're going to have a good guest on in the next segment. It's John Vague, or however you pronounce his name. How do you pronounce his name?
John Vague. Sounds good to me.
John Vague. Vaage. Sounds Dutch or looks Dutch. I don't know how you pronounce that in Dutch, but you get the gist of it. He's going to talk to us about Murray Rothbard, his birthday, and apparently an upcoming event that he is either spearheading or a part of is celebrating Murray Rothbard's birthday. And we'll find out just what exactly is going on and what fun stuff is going to be happening at that event. We also have I know your name. I'm just giving you I'm just pausing so it seems like I have to think about it. Like, because you're just that unimportant to me. I'm pulling the. Actually, I shouldn't say that. You probably know where I was going there. But Brian Deary, chief scientist for Factom. Factom, of course, is an Austin-based blockchain technology company. We've had Brian Deary on, God, more times than I can count. We've had Paul Snow on.
That's because you can't count very high. But
That's true. We've had their CEO, Paul Snow, on as well. Paul Snow, by the way, is also, of course, the founder of the Texas Bitcoin Conference. We've had 2 annual Texas Bitcoin conferences, and we'll find out hopefully later this year whether there will be a third one. We were kind of discussing that off air. It is a big event. It takes a lot of organization. It takes a lot of money and time and dedicated effort to bring forth. So if it doesn't happen, while I'll be a little disappointed, I'll certainly understand, because Paul Snow has so much on his plate. And is only one man. He's only a mere mortal. It's amazing enough that he was able to bring us 2 in a row that were very successful with a lot of incredible speakers, 2 excellent venues, and just an all-around good time. And so we'll see coming up if that's going to happen again this year. If it does, I will be really excited, and we'll be coming to you live from that when it does. Well, Brian, chief scientist of Factom, what's new with you lately?
Oh, well, something very interesting has happened in the Bitcoin world.
Ooh, well, tell me about that.
We do have John on the line if you wanted to.
Oh, already?
Let me see if he'll.
Well, let's let Brian first talk about it, then we bring him on. We're going to have him on the second segment anyway. Right. So
I don't want to give away too much if John wants to talk about it, but it's a zero knowledge proof. It basically allows the current version of Bitcoin to use very powerful mathematical constructs, future math, moon math, if you will.
Moon math? Is that like a term they use?
Zero knowledge sounds a lot like Bitcoin for dummies.
It's the other way around. It's for probably only a couple dozen people in the world actually understand how this math works.
So when you call it moon math, is that because no one's ever done the math before? Just like no one's ever been to the moon?
It's more of the mathematics behind it are unproven.
So kind of conjectural, like there's a strong maybe case to be made that the theorem is correct, but no one's proven it kind of thing?
Something along those lines. It's very cutting edge knowledge.
Okay. And so what brought about this recent development? Who announced it or who's working on it?
It's coming out of the Zcash group. They're building a alternative currency based on more generic constructs of this to add more anonymity layers to their token. However, the mathematics behind it are very general, and it basically allows a person to prove that they know something without a doubt, without giving away what they know.
Okay, that's interesting. I feel like perhaps have you touched upon this perhaps on the show before? Even maybe Chris Odom rings a bell for having discussed this on the show. I get that very abstract, vague, generic explanation of it. I don't think I'd get something much more technical, but I feel like I've heard of this before. And so they weren't even working on Bitcoin. They were working on their own cryptocurrency. But obviously it has broader application, and of course cryptocurrencies are kind of all of a piece anyway, more or less. So that's why it has the ability to be transferred to the Bitcoin protocol, or
so it's more the mathematics that have been applied to the Bitcoin protocol, and basically it allows you to have something similar to smart contracts, only they're smart contracts that are private to yourself, and they the example that they gave was they
dancing with yourself.
They proved a Sudoku puzzle. So they locked up money based on the knowledge that someone would have solved this puzzle. Someone on the other side of the internet was able to prove mathematically that they have solved the puzzle without giving the
puzzle results away. Or
exactly.
That's fascinating. I mean, I try to fathom that in a purely conceptual way, and obviously in pure semantic form, I understand that. But like to conceive of someone conveying definitive mathematical proof that they've solved it without giving away the solution, I can't even wrap my head around that. Like that, to me, that sounds like magic math. But it's amazing. Like it's incredible that people have figured that out. And so, and again, what are some of the applications of this for Bitcoin?
So this is one of the things. We're such at the cutting edge now that it's hard to imagine how people are going to envision this and be able to use these new mathematics. So right now it's a Sudoku puzzle, which is just a toy example. But any computer program can be expressed in this language. So you can prove that something was delivered from a shipper without showing that without showing the address, for example.
Okay.
Only that it was delivered. It's
so. I mean, this is definitely going to have a lot of create a lot of security improvements in additional anonymity for Bitcoin and Bitcoin users and things like that.
Yes, and it will allow a lot more peer-to-peer levels of interaction. So right now, this mathematics hasn't been known, so problems in the world that could be solved by it aren't really seen and addressed. Very much like electricity, you didn't know.
You don't bother with problems around electricity until it comes about,
yes.
Kind of thing.
Yes.
Because you have no reason to, kind of thing.
Yes.
It's like necessity is the mother of invention kind of idea. Well, we're coming to break with Brian Deere, Chief Scientist of Factom. We're going to talk with John Vague, something. We'll let him tell us on the other side. Stay tuned.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
This is what happens when you call the cops. Say what? This is what happens when you call the cops. Come on. This is what happens when you call the cops. You get your rights violated or you all get shot. This is what happens when you call the cops. This is what happens when you call the cops. This is what happens when you call the cops. You get your rights rights violated or you all get shot.
I'm sick of people being victimized by criminal cops. Psychopathic predators terrorizing neighborhood blocks. Equipped with pepper spray, mace, cuffs, tasers, and glocks. They like serial killers acting out subliminal thoughts. Forget what you taught. These cops have got a license to kill. Witness intimidation means that they can use it at will. Code of silence means that the pigs will never let out a squeal. And if they go to court, they know the judge will make them a deal. For real, that's why they stopping me, locking me up and stopping me, confiscating my property, targeting my demography, making the poor commodities, profiting off of poverty, enforcing policy, supporting prison economies. Yeah, no one makes money when the violence stops. Hating brutality is the way to make a criminal crime.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Crypto Show here on this lovely February 20th, 2016. And I have a traffic ticket to pay by tomorrow, so I got to make sure I do that. And I'm telling you so I can remind myself so I don't get a warrant. Because I see they're having those warrant roundups. Because this is what happens when you call the cops, guys. This is what happens. But it is Sunday, the 28th of February, and 75% of the time, this would be the last day in February.
What was the ticket for? It wasn't anything like too much weight going over a bridge or something like that.
Yeah, it was. You know, when you come to those, like, you'll see those signs for like the semis, and it'll be like the weight stations or whatever.
You didn't stop at the weigh station.
No. Yeah, I got ticketed for that. I guess they got people, on watch for that. So if you think you can get out of the watchful out of the law, you're wrong. It's the long arm of the law, and you better respect it because it's the law, whatever that means. The only law you should respect is Frederick Bastiat's The Law. Excellent book. But we are, before we get to our guest and then our second guest we brought on the line, I want to remind everybody, is the Logos Radio Network fundraiser still going on?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. So check that out, guys. Logos has brought us so much incredible programming, so many great shows, including this one. Well, I'm just being nice, but all the other shows on this network are great.
Except for this one. But they were nice enough to bring us on. And so help out. There's still some cool prizes you can win for donating. Bazooka?
A bazooka? Is that for real?
No, I'm kidding.
Oh man! But there are a couple cool prizes from Central Texas Gunworks for first and second prize, and then All About Vape has some gift certificates. My Magic Mud for the first 25 people who donate $25. And even if you don't get anything, you'll get the peace of mind knowing that this excellent network continues on the air.
Halliburton has donated a tank.
That's awesome. Thank you, Dick Cheney. I'm sending Dick Cheney a personal thank you card with a special photo of me. Wide angle. Very wide angle. It's one of those fishbowl lens. It's one of those panorama, like on your camera. You have the 360 kind of thing. Anyway, but check that out, guys. Really, I mean, Logos, the people at Logos work so hard to bring us all this stuff, and they work for free in many respects, or certainly for very little.
They work for freedom.
And for freedom. So help out. And I don't want to go too long talking about other stuff because we need to get back. But check that out. Don't forget freeross.org or thecryptoshow.com/freeross. Some cool stuff you can get for donating to the Free Ross campaign. Freeross.org also has the picture reveal that Lynn talked about. So check all that out. Don't forget Brave New Books and Hill Country Home Improvements, our sponsors. And by the way, Brave New Books, if you weren't here last night, Roger Stone was here to talk about his books, including the most recent one, The Clintons' War on Women. Alex Jones actually stopped by the bookstore. It was, I believe, the second time ever that Alex has been to the bookstore. He introduced Roger Stone. It was a really big turnout. I regret missing it. I can't believe I was out of the loop on that one. I've just been busy.
It was a hell of a Trump rally.
That's what I hear. But, either way, that kind of stuff happens at Brave New Books. Really cool guests like Alex Jones and Roger Stone show up. And sometimes it's a surprise, but you'll never know unless you keep up at the events page at bravenewbookstore.com or just drop by the bookstore. Anyway, let's get back. Stop stalling, Brian Deary. So let's, so just give a recap again of what this mathematics is and what it can do for Bitcoin. And then and also let me introduce our other guest. Sorry, I'm so scattered today. John Vaghi. John, how do you pronounce your last name?
Sorry, guys. It's Vaghi, and you're close to Norwegian. Vaghi,
oh, it's Norwegian. Oh, that's well, you Nordics.
Yeah, do you ever see the A with like a little ring around the top of the? Yeah, they have a different glyph, I guess, for the double A, but here we just.
It's a rune, John. It's a Nordic rune. Okay, I get the correct term. No, that's really cool. Do you put the little circle when you write your name?
I've experimented with like doing that in my signature, but now I've stuck with the Americanized spelling.
Oh, okay. Well, good. America. Well, John, thanks so much for being on the show. We're going to get to what you're on for here shortly.
He doesn't want to confuse Trump voters.
Nice. But definitely in the meantime, I want you to join the discussion with Brian Deary. I'm going to let Brian kind of recap, because it is, highly technical, abstract stuff. I want him to recap what this new math is and how it can help Bitcoin. And then you were telling us off air that you have kind of a cool analogy to help clarify what this is that Justice Ranvier, of all illustrious people, gave you. So I'm going to let Brian recap, and then I want to hear this analogy you've got for us. So Brian, go ahead, just recap it for us. And tell us how this is going to revolutionize Bitcoin.
So it's been kind of a long time coming with this. There have been many proposals. So back in 2013, there was a proposal to modify Bitcoin to bring this mathematics into it. It was a little premature, so it didn't happen. Then there were some academic projects called ZeroCoin and ZeroCash, which used these mathematics. And then recently, Zcash has been announced.
Zcash?
Just Zcash.
Oh, okay.
It was released in Wired magazine, and so this is an actual implementation of the academic theories, basically. But the mathematics behind it can be used to make Bitcoin transactions today way, way, way more powerful. And we're just getting knowledge. We're just trying to understand the power of it at this point.
Like you were saying, it's just like with electricity. Before electricity became prevalent or understood, people couldn't necessarily imagine or would never bother to imagine what they could do with it, all the wonderful things.
Yes.
So a similar kind of situation.
Yes. And so it's going to be a very exciting few years with this new mathematics. And the first real world example of it just happened this past week.
Oh, and what's that?
Solving a Sudoku puzzle.
Oh, that you were just talking about. That's right.
Yes.
So you said the math real quick was sort of, uncharted territory. So the zero knowledge proof, is the proof itself proven? Does that make sense? Or is it still is there any conjectural element left in it? Because you seem to imply that the math was still out as far as perfectly being rigorously proven.
Some of the smart people that I talked to wouldn't trust it.
Really?
Yes.
And why is that?
Well, there could always be someone smarter out there who finds the holes. And this is very, very common in a lot of cryptography, where someone thinks they come up with a clever idea, and then someone comes along a year or two later and says, nope, it's wrong because of this and this and this. And now your cryptography is broken, and anything that's based on it is worthless.
So we should still tread carefully with this, because it's possible that errors could be present within this type of math or its application, and someone could come along and will either point those out or even potentially exploit them if people start relying on this, and it turns out to be less than perfect, I guess, right?
But the promise of it is very exciting.
No, it sounds exciting. Would you say almost like the 0 point proof is like the holy grail of one of the holy grails of cryptography? I mean, is this like one of those sort of long-standing, how in physics or math they'll have like that set of problems that everyone is like, no one solved this. These are like really hard, and those are like the
maybe not to that degree, but it's certainly up there.
It's certainly up there. Wow, that's incredible. Well, we're kind of coming to break. I want to get John Vage's John Vage.
Yep.
Is that it?
Yeah, that's right. Got it.
Okay, I'll get it eventually.
Yeah. If your mind is foggy, remember foggy.
What's that? Oh, if your mind is foggy.
My dad's corny line.
I like that. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get John's take on it, too, on the other side. We'll also talk with Brian Deary about another interesting topic that came up during the break, and then we'll talk to John about Rothbard and upcoming events about that after that. So stay tuned. We'll be right back here on The Crypto Show.
Candy, soda, and cupcakes may please your taste buds, but did you know that binging on sugar can slow down your brain? I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, and I'll share new research showing how sweets may dumb you down next.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This message is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
Attention sugar junkies, if snarfling sweets and guzzling soda is your thing, I've got some not-so-sweet news for you. A new study shows a diet high in fructose could make you dumber in just a few short weeks. UCLA researchers gave lab rats fructose in their drinking water while training them how to navigate a maze. After 6 weeks of sucking sugar, the dazed animals began to struggle. In fact, their overall brain function diminished noticeably. Still want that fudge sundae? Then eat plenty of foods rich in omega-3 fatty acids. Rats who ate omega-3s zipped through that maze much faster than those that didn't. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most prided search engine.
You are listening to the Logos Radio Network. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
What's your plan for tomorrow? Are you a leader or will you follow? Are you a fighter or will you cower? It's our time to take back the power. What's your plan for tomorrow? Are you a leader or will you follow? Are you a fighter or will you cower? It's our time to take back the power. What you gonna do when they show up in black suits on your street and I make boots?
All right, guys, welcome back to the Crypto Show here on this lovely February 28th, 2016, Sunday. Yeah, Sunday. I'm losing track of time. We are talking with Brian Deary, Chief Scientist of Factom. Factom is a Bitcoin blockchain technology company, and the founder, Paul Snow, is also the founder of the Texas Bitcoin Conference. And Brian was telling us about the zero knowledge proof, basically a way to prove that you know something, say a solution to a Sudoku problem, without actually giving away that solution. Is that a good way to sum it up?
Sure.
And another way to sum it up, John, who we have on the line, John Vaghi, got a pretty cool analogy from another very smart Bitcoin guy like Brian Deary, Justice Ranvier, who's been on the show many times. John, welcome to the show, of course. And I guess tell us about that analogy.
Okay. Well, Justice explained this to me about a year ago. So if I get this wrong, he's going to give me grief. And maybe, Brian can clear it up. But the way it was explained to me is that it's not entirely a bulletproof proof, you could say, that it's sort of probabilistic. And the analogy was used is that, say there's like a kind of, there's two openings in the side of a cliff, like there's two caves, and you go in a little bit and they kind of meet, so it's forming a more or less like a loop. But there's a door with a lock, say like a jail cell door. And so the person inside this cave, they say, "Oh, I know how to open this door. I know how to unlock this door, but I'm not gonna allow you to watch me open this door." And so the other person who wants to see the proof says, "Okay, well, I'm going to leave the cave and shout out which side I want you to be, which side of the door I want you to be, and then I'm going to run in from that side. And if you're not on the other side, well, then I'll know that you don't actually." That you're not actually able to open this door. And so after a couple subsequent rounds of being able to demonstrate that this person can open the door and get to the other side of this tunnel, he's created kind of a proof beyond a reasonable doubt, you could say, that he in fact does know how to open this door. Now, when you're doing this mathematically, say you randomly choose to say, "Oh, be on the right side of this door." Well, maybe he started out on the right side of that door, so you can't say with certainty that he knows how to open the door. But after enough rounds, and successful proving that he can be on the side you want him to be, that's pretty much as good as you really need in the real world. So
that's pretty interesting.
Remembering that the details quietly, not quite perfectly, and maybe there's been advances in the mathematics that are kind of demonstrated in this new announcement. But that was the analogy that kind of sprung in my mind when I heard about the topic come up.
What do you think of the analogy, Brian?
Oh, I've heard it before. It's a very good analogy. And so basically, if you do this, say 256 times, if you ask the person to be on the side of the door that you want them to be on randomly, it's about as likely as there are stars in the universe. Something along those lines.
It's about as likely that someone could crack it, you mean? Or what do you mean?
That's just pure chance that they happen to be on the right side of the door when you...
Right, so like 1 over the number of stars in the universe,
yeah,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay, so that effectively is, that's effectively zero knowledge.
Sure.
I see. So that also helps clarify it, too. I can kind of see in my own crude layman's way why it's not definitive, absolute zero knowledge in that sense, because in theory someone could know it, but it's just so unlikely that okay, that's interesting. I like that. I have to go to to Justice for more analogies on Bitcoin and Bitcoin-related technology when Brian Deary's not around to explain it for us, of course. Well, that's pretty interesting. Well, let's switch gears because I know we don't have too much time with you, John, and we can always switch back with Brian on the topic. But tell us, there's something about Murray Rothbard coming up.
Yeah, so I'm kind of I guess, picking up the mantle for this group in Austin. It's the Liberty on the Rocks, Austin, Texas. We have a Facebook page, facebook.com, Liberty on the Rocks, Austin TX. And I'm just kind of hosting an event to celebrate Murray Rothbard's birthday, which is this Wednesday, March 2nd. Murray Rothbard is kind of the father of modern libertarian and the libertarian movement. And I think, there's no better occasion to celebrate his legacy than to, throw back a few drinks with fellow kind of liberty-minded individuals in the Austin area. So it's pretty low-key. I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of programming. It's just a good way to kind of network and have a good time, and celebrate, a real great leader in the cause for liberty.
Apparently, so you should probably tell some. Like I said, you should probably tell jokes or something.
2nd. Oh man, yeah. I'll have to come up with some good stuff. He had a real great sense of humor. So
yeah, that's what
Walter Block
was telling us, that he was quite the prankster.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, really look at watch any video on YouTube. There's not that many, unfortunately, that feature Murray Rothbard giving a speech or talk. Unfortunately, he left us in 1995. Too soon, I think. But yeah, on YouTube, you really get a sense of his charisma and his real warm personality, despite being, one of the most intelligent polymaths and prolific writers that the liberty movement has seen in the last 100 years, if not more.
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
we're gonna be meeting up at 8:30 on Barfly, or at Barfly. It's a great bar, great music. It's real chill. It's on Airport Boulevard, between 51st Street and Koenig.
And this will be on the 2nd, right?
Been there
on his birthday.
That's isn't that the one next to the pool
March
hall?
2nd it was actually his birthday. Yeah. So it's gonna be
Barflies. Isn't that next to the pool hall and All About Vapor and all that right there in the same parking lot?
I think so.
It might. It's on the 2nd floor. I can't say what's,
no, you're thinking of the Grand.
Oh, okay.
No, that's a little further south of there. But it's close. It is definitely close. No, Barflies is a cool place.
It's on the west side of Airport Boulevard, next to, I think, Freedom Auto Sales. Yeah, it's a great spot. They got a little outdoor, patio.
Yeah, it's closer to 2222, kind of where Quality Seafood, the Old Lamb's Candies used to be in Burger Tex. Well, that's great. So 8:30 this Wednesday, February 2nd, Rothbard's birthday. Liberty on the Rocks, LOTR. I like that, just like Lord of the Rings. Liberty on the Rocks will be hosting a Rothbard birthday party celebration. Come if you're of age, have some beers. And you said there's not really going to be any.
Or if you have a fake ID.
It's not like I expect you to adhere to the state's ridiculous rules, but not that I'm encouraging you to break them. But I am. Yeah. But yeah, who else is going to be there that people might know locally from the Liberty circles?
Let's see. I can't really say. I'm pretty new, relatively to the Austin kind of Liberty circle scene. I think Joel is coming, and some other
Joel
people.
Joel Williamson, awesome, great guy.
Well, I was going to come until you said he was coming.
Yeah, yeah, it's going to be great. I mean, I'm just trying to get out the word and kind of get the ball rolling. So, we're happy to have anyone who's a fan of liberty and a fan of alcohol. So, and you can come if you don't want to drink. It's still going to be a good time.
I think I'm a fan of both. And where can people learn more? Is there a Liberty on the Rocks Facebook page or website?
Yeah, we have a Liberty on the Rocks Facebook page. It's just facebook.com, Liberty on the Rocks, Austin TX. There's a Facebook event there. Really, anything that you can Google on Rothbard is going to be good. YouTube has some great
Awesome.
speeches.
Well, John Voggy, Liberty on the Rocks, Murray Rothbard's birthday celebration at Barflies, 8:30 this Wednesday, February.
Easy.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Crypto Show. It is February 28th, 2016, a Sunday, and we were just talking with John Vaghi of Liberty on the Rocks. Was it libertyontherocks.com?
Yeah.
Was the website. You can check it out. There's also Liberty on the Rocks Facebook page. But basically, this Wednesday, March 2nd, is Murray Rothbard's birthday. And in commemoration of him and his life and his birthday, Liberty on the Rocks is going to be hosting a cool get-together, nothing too formal, but a little networking party at Barflies on Airport Boulevard between 51st Street and 2222 at 8:30 this Wednesday, March 2nd. So be there. Obviously, Barflies has alcoholic beverages if you want to join in. You don't have to join into that, but you definitely have to join in on the discussion and merrymaking that's going to be going on there. So thank you, John Vaghi and Liberty on the Rocks for that. And I might just show up after the show. I'll be there late, of course. But if you want to meet Chris from the Crypto Show, local celebrity, I know there's a lot of fans out there. I get a lot of marriage proposals from women and a lot of invitations to go out on dates. But, you know.
Yeah, not since that guy Mike stopped hanging out behind the store waiting on us and stalking us.
I wonder if he still listens. But anyway, hope to see you guys there. Don't forget.
Or your girlfriend, what's her name? Bort? Oh, I'm just kidding. He's going to kill me now.
Probably. Don't forget Logos Radio Network's fundraiser at logosradionetwork.com. Don't forget our sponsors, Brave New Books and Hill Country Home Improvements. And the webpage is bravenewbookstore.com and thebitcoinbookstore.com. And some cool events. Alex Jones from InfoWars. Alex Jones himself was here last night with Roger Stone. What an incredible event.
Wow, that sounds magical. You know what else is magical?
What?
The magic word.
What is the magic word?
Peso.
Peso. I like that.
P-E-S-O.
P-E-S-O. Peso.
Peso.
Pay some pesos so you don't get taken to jail by the cops in Mexico. But, for our LTB listeners, peso is the magic word. Don't forget, thecryptoshow.com/free Ross. All right. Well, let's get back to Brian Deary and zero knowledge proof that we've been discussing. And then we'll actually discuss something else he had that was interesting, I thought. One thing I wanted to ask you about the zero knowledge proof. You mentioned people who were very smart, who were skeptical or critical of it. Are you able to mention who those people are? And
go ahead. Out them.
Come on, Brian.
It was it was a conference from Chatham House Rules, so you can talk about what was said, but not who said it.
Was this Bilderberg?
Bilderberg is happening right now, actually.
Wait, is it actually? I didn't even know that.
Yes.
Is it really?
So
the Satoshi Roundtable?
The biggest conspiracy theorist wasn't even aware that Bilderberg was happening.
Well, the Bitcoin Bilderberg.
Yes.
Oh, wah, wah. Yeah. Well, no, the Bitcoin Bilderberg would be the Blockchain Association, where the law enforcement get together with the CEOs of the Bitcoin companies. That would be the Bitcoin Bilderberg, I think. But what is it? The Satoshi, what's going on?
The Satoshi Roundtable, which is actually a U-shaped table this year. Is
interesting.
It's actually it looks like a bunch of school desks put together in a horseshoe shape.
Yeah. But it's an invite-only conference with big name Bitcoiners, typically CEOs of these companies.
No one that would talk to us.
Invite only. Is it in the Swiss Alps?
This time it's in Florida.
Of course, Florida.
Yes. The Swiss Alps of Florida.
Of
last year it was in the Caribbean.
It's Caribbean.
Oh, but this year, plain old Florida. And
by the way, is this the U shape you're talking about?
Oh, not that U-shaped. That's more circular. This was more square.
Okay. Yeah. Basically, they're modeling it after the United Nations Security Council room. And I'm on to their games. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry.
There's no Bitcoin in the Bitcoin room.
Wait, what?
The no fighting in the war room.
What's Dr. Strangelove? Yes. Oh my God, I can't believe I missed that. It sounded so familiar, but I was like, wait, what is that? What is that? That is one of my favorite movies of all time. Like, that is a genius movie. And that was like Kubrick's, I mean, it wasn't his first movie, I don't think, but it was early on in his career. And it's just like brilliant. Anyway, we should have a Dr. Strangelove party. But that's cool. So, and when is that conference? When is the
it was
roundtable?
Today and yesterday. And I haven't heard too much from it. But
Paul's there, right?
Paul and David are both there.
Is that a factum?
It is indeed.
That's awesome. And how long does the conference go for?
Oh, just 2 days.
Oh, just 2 days. Cool. Yeah. And is it kind of just a chit chat? Did they ever announce exciting developments or upcoming events from it?
It's more of a get-together, I believe. There was, from what I heard, there's a lot of reconciliation and getting together and trying to get consensus moving forward with the Civil War.
That's an obvious comparison, but I never thought about that till you said it. I like that. That's good. You mean with the whole block size limit debate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously. Okay. That's kind of cool.
So that's some of what I've been hearing from there. I've heard that some of the people gave presentations. Patrick Byrne, I heard, gave a presentation about his project, T0, which is taking Wall Street and getting rid of the middlemen who take a cut and do fractional reserve banking on your stocks, where you actually think you own them, but you don't. And it's a huge scam that he...
Well, tell us more about that.
So Patrick Byrne likes to talk about this. When he took Overstock.com public way back when, he was courted by all these people who had less than pure motives about what to do with his stock. And he was a very principled guy, and he did not like this. And so he tried to go to the SEC, and they kind of laughed him out of the office. And he instead started a blog called Deep Capture. Where
regulatory capture?
Yes,
nice.
Yes. But it's regulatory capture that's so ingrained in the industry that it's all the way down.
Well, just real quick as a comment on that, I forget what I was reading. This idea was not new to me, but it was a good reminder. You could argue that the very regulatory apparatuses that were set up a long time ago, say the SEC for the financial industry, were set up by the very industry that it was supposed to regulate, with the veneer of being an actual regulatory apparatus to contain the excesses of the industry and to protect the average person or consumer, when in reality it was set up to give advantage and privilege to these insiders in the industry. And as an example...
You've been reading your Rothbard, haven't you?
I have. Look at you. Yeah, exactly. Good. I like that. Maybe it was Rothbard actually that I was reading. I can't remember. It was earlier this week. I get lost in I'm forgetful. It's all that beer I've been drinking. But, look at it as an example. Bernie Madoff. Bernie Madoff used to brag about how many people he knew at the SEC who he was related to. Either by marriage or by blood, not just like people he was close to and was friends with. And I believe Madoff also himself served on the SEC in some capacity, as well as the
chief ripoff officer.
Exactly. So anyway, you get my point is how deep the capture is. Like he's saying, I love that title of his blog. But anyway, continue with Patrick Byrne, and he went to the SEC. He decided to start a blog, and tell us more about his. This whole thing with the scams and the stocks.
So the best way to make the future better is to build it yourself, and that's kind of what he's doing. He has imagined the technology that Bitcoin has built upon, and he wants to expand it to make it so that people can own their stocks themselves instead of being held by a middleman it's held by a middleman, which is held as a contract with the DTCC Corporation, which is basically owns all the stock in the U.S., something along those lines. And you only have contracts with them. And it's
weird. I'm sorry. Go on.
Yeah. And so during Hurricane Sandy, the DTCC flooded and basically shut down all of the trading and all the settlement that could happen. So by making it more decentralized, it makes it more robust against
more resilient.
Yes.
Yeah, against disasters like that.
Yes.
Whether cyber attacks or even a real military attack or just a natural disaster.
Or just theft, which is his accusations.
Well, real quick, I don't want to get too far afield, but this is really interesting. So the DTCC, you said they own all the stocks. Is that literal? Is this the idea kind of like I've heard elsewhere where like this one secretive organization really owns all the stocks. They just sort of lend it out to everyone else, and it's written under law somewhere that they can recall all the assets if they want to. Like, is it that kind of sort of conspiracy or
I don't think it's a conspiracy. It's more of a consortium.
Oh, okay. I love the sort of euphemistic substitute word there. That's pretty good. I don't think it's a conspiracy. I think it's a consortium. I like that.
No.
Well, can you explain, I guess just real quick, we got a minute left though, and we'll talk more on the other side, but kind of explain this a little bit more because I need to grasp it a little better.
So the way he describes it, there was a crisis in the 70s where there was too much paper being moved around between brokerages, where one would buy too much stock and they'd need to ship it to another brokerage. And it'd be so much easier if they could just change in a database who owned what. Well, now someone needs to maintain that database and someone needs to own it. So the DTCC came out of this to own the stocks and basically have contractual relationships to manage.
So we're coming to break. This is something that you could do with the blockchain, arguably, but without being centralized like that previous system sounds like it must have been.
Yes.
Which, of course, is so subject to abuse, obviously. We're talking more about that and other things on the other side with Brian Deary here on The Crypto Show. Stay tuned, guys. All right, guys, welcome back to The Crypto Show here on this lovely February 28, 2016, a Sunday, here on Logos Radio Network, brought to you, as always, by Brave New Books and Hill Country Home Improvements. And in the second hour, we're talking with Brian Deary, Chief Scientist of Factom. And Brian was telling us about the Satoshi Roundtable that's happening right now. And then he was telling us about a guy named Patrick Byrne, who has a blog called Deep Capture about the very, very deep regulatory capture involved in the financial industry.
That's pretty much all he's known for.
Is that really all he's known for? Oh, okay.
No, Overstock.com.
Oh, and Overstock.com. Sorry, yeah. Well, so Patrick Byrne also brought Overstock.com to market. So he was involved in the IPO, you said?
Yes.
Involved in their initial public offering. And he was getting fed up with some stuff he was seeing. And so, Brian, you're talking about the DTCC. I think was that what it was called?
Yes.
And so you were explaining that back in the 80s, they were having so much trouble shuffling paper, basically all the stock certificates around to different brokerages and stuff, that they decided to form a sort of centralized database. Is that right?
That's about it.
And of course, needless to say, when you do that, especially when there's a lot of money and power involved, that's ripe for abuse. And of course, before blockchain technology, essentially, and a lot of the modern encryption techniques, it would be very difficult to not give someone excessive power over determining who gets what asset. Basically, like, just like with today's dollars, the government can come in, they can seize your bank account digitally, just like that, because of the way the whole electronic system works, as well as the legal system. And I'm sure that sort of abuse could happen. They could just transfer someone's assets to someone else if they really wanted to, secretly or whatever. And of course, at least with the stock certificates, you had a physical, unique document that could, while of course it could be counterfeited, it could ultimately somehow be verified that this is your unique stock certificate for a certain amount of stock in company A or whatever. But anyway, go on with the story and tell us more.
So the blockchains solve the problem of knowing who owns what, very much like this big database solved the problem of knowing who owns what, and that was the crux of the problem. So if we can get rid of this central database and make it this collective database, essentially, which is the blockchain, anyone can update it on their own. Without having to go through some middleman.
And was that accurate in describing like this centralized database before the blockchain? I mean, could those abuses actually theoretically at least happen?
Oh, sure.
And you even kind of implied that he was.
Well, so the abuses that that were happening with that you had mentioned are from the legal process, and that would happen either way. Just because a stock is on the blockchain doesn't mean that it's now magical.
Well, yeah, for sure.
But it does stop one of the big problems that he's identified, which is a fractional reserve. So basically what that means is someone like E-Trade would own one share, but they would own it on behalf of their customers. And they would tell 3 customers at any given point that they own that stock. So if the chips fell at any point, things would not be as you expected.
Yeah. And people don't realize that this sort of fractional reserve stuff goes on kind of all the time in other asset classes. It's not just dollars. Like, for instance, they have, this was kind of well researched over the years. I forget the organization, but in gold, you had paper gold, the naked short selling. You basically had 100 paper gold to actual 1 physical gold, effectively gold fractional reserving. And you can have the same with these other asset classes. And of course, it can lead to all sorts of problems, not just with the individual people involved, but with the broader economy. And so it's a real nasty problem that the prior system would run into. There, go on.
So by having all of these stock certificates on the blockchain, the instant someone stops owning it, someone else owns it. And so there's no point along the chain that two people can own it at the same time, which gets rid of this slop in the system, which gets rid of all the games that you can play. And they played a lot of games.
Oh, yeah. And I'm fascinated too to see what the blockchain does to accounting practices, because, accounting is not, it's as much an art as it is any sort of, mathematical science, if you will. And kind of like with the paper gold I was talking about, central banks have been known to say, borrow gold from another central bank, and not even physically move it, put that gold on their asset sheet and treat it as if they actually owned it. And then they'll even lend that out again. And so, and again, this happens with all sorts of different assets. We just have never heard of it, or if you have heard of it, it's because you happen to have read some obscure report on it. And so it's a pretty big deal. And of course, so my point is the blockchain sort of necessarily demands a certain amount of rigor and transparency and honesty to some extent.
It solves the problem by making everything transparent.
Exactly. So some of the leisure domain, some of these shenanigans going on would be more difficult to do. Obviously with the blockchain accounting for things. So, but anyway, yeah. And so that's really cool. So he's proposing, what is it called?
T0.
T0. I like that.
Yes. It's a sort of, so the current, settlement time, it's a play on, the settlement time. So when you go to your brokerage and say, I want to sell this stock, you have a T5 or a T3.
So like time 5 seconds or something, or
5 days.
Or 5 days, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's how long it takes for when you click the button to when all the machinations of the system happen and you actually get your money.
5 days.
Yes.
Man, that's so pre-Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. And so is this still in the works? When does this roll out? Do you know?
He has a pilot project already on the, I believe it's the NASDAQ, where he's using a form of colored coins, which is directly on the Bitcoin blockchain. But the problem is the Bitcoin blockchain won't scale to the size of Wall Street.
Because even the transactions on Wall Street are astronomically bigger than the current transaction volume of Bitcoin. Yeah.
So he's developing his own blockchain system with some partners to give high volume accounting, and he can do this because it's got more trust in the system. Bitcoin is great for when you have very, very little trust. However, these individuals operating this already know each other and they have prior business relationships. It's just an accounting nightmare. So they can manage to use less censorship-resistant things because they still have the force of law that you had alluded to earlier.
So I'm sorry, are you saying that Bitcoin, in a sense, is not the optimal solution for them because it's so trustless? Are you saying it's a trade-off situation? Or
it's a trade-off.
It's a trade-off situation. And so is the trade-off inherent to the technology? Kind of like the more trustless you are, the less you get of certain other features that are appropriate to this circumstance because people do trust each other.
So the reason why people trust Bitcoin is because no individual controls it. It's more of a probabilistic who controls it. And so it's based on many things. It's based on how much electricity you burn. It's based on how good of a network connection you have. And these things.
Is it based on how fat I am? If it were, I would be like a 51% attack.
We did learn about gravity waves
75
last week.
Oh yeah, I heard about the 75. Yeah, probably. Thanks. Aren't those put out by like massive like neutron stars surrounding or like swirling around a black hole or something?
Sure, yeah.
Oh, okay,
but everything has gravity.
Well, I know, but thank you for calling me a massive celestial body. But anyway, yeah. So what were you saying about Bitcoin and the?
So this is the existential crisis that Bitcoin is having now. It's the crisis was more of a going from 1 to 2 or 1 to 20 size, and that is nowhere close to the 1 to 11 billion that would be required to have the stock market.
Yeah, forget Visa and MasterCard. People forget the sheer volume of trading that goes on the stock exchanges. I mean, it's pretty massive too. Mm-hmm. So that's really cool. I mean, because that's a very necessary, obviously, other component of the financial system. It's not simply do you pay for your coffee or do you transfer money. You also have to transfer assets.
And also it brings into another problem. It's called, I've heard it called a top-heavy problem, where if your assets that are running on top of Bitcoin are worth more than Bitcoin itself, now it's very profitable to spend money to attack the network and follow all the network rules, but profit for yourself. And Bitcoin basically relies on economic incentives to keep all the miners working together towards a common goal. But if the economic incentives become top-heavy and other avenues of revenue come to monkey with the system, if they get more money from monkeying, they'll do that.
So are you saying that his thing solves the potential problem for that, or
yes, and
because it's
and the T0 system would not be top-heavy because it's got trusted validators, which are not concerned about economic incentives in the same way that Bitcoin miners are.
Okay. We got about a minute and 15 left till break. So explain it again, though. I mean, I feel like I almost get the concept. I mean, I do in a way where it's like, you can steer someone's incentive in a different direction, and that can hurt the system. But so how, if an asset is being allocated on the blockchain, is what you're saying, like for, well, explain it again.
Sure. So let's say that I have some stock transfer, and I want to move it from my account to your account, and it goes through, but and then you send me some cash. But on the other side, I've got another person who also wants to buy it, and so I can send it to the first person, get their cash, reverse the transaction, keep their cash, and then give it to the other person, and that follows all the Bitcoin rules.
Interesting. We'll have a clarification on the other side. We'll also talk about quantum computing and some other stuff with Brian Deary, Chief Scientist of Factom, so stay tuned.
This is the Logos Radio Network.
Oh, for the longest time. Oh, for the longest. If you said that Bitcoin was my life, I would tell you.
Show enough. Show you right.
What else can I do? I'm so inspired by you, and I'm just holding for the longest time. Once I do my stocks and bonds.
Welcome back, and we're talking about shirts with Brian Deary. Something you would only get if you were here in the studio with us off air. Too bad for you if you're not. This is the crypto.
Too good for you.
Too good for you, probably. But for all you out there who are shirtless, good for you. But we are talking with Brian Deary about T0, Patrick Byrne's new technology for trading and assets like on a stock exchange. And you were explaining how a perverse incentive could be created by such a system. And explain that again. And you said you had a real world example.
So I've got a couple of real world examples, actually. So the biggest problem with putting things on the blockchain in a censorship resistant fashion is that the miners and the validators, they can front run. What they can do is they can see your trade before it finalizes, and they can make their own trades with that knowledge and profit. This would be like if you made a trade on E-Trade and they saw, ooh, this guy's about to buy a bunch of stocks. Let's buy it at this lower price and sell it to him at the price that he's set.
So they sort of skip into that bid-ask spread kind of, and they get like a little chunk of it that you would have gotten basically had it simply gone directly to you. They just middleman it. They force middleman it.
Is this something that's going to be done with bots?
Sure, yeah. So I had read about this happening on the Ripple system. Ripple does decentralized currency trading, and it's not supposed to happen. But there's a bit of a mystery in the ordering, and someone figured out the mystery and was able to see transactions as they happened, do a little bit of front running themselves, and then profited immensely from injecting themselves between the two trades.
Oh.
And this didn't require being a validator. It just required knowing enough about the system to.
Does that mean it was like an inside job kind of thing? Did they have to be?
No, not at all. Not at all.
They just had to have a good sense for what the technology was being used. The technology that was being used.
No, Chris, Ripple did not bring down the towers.
I'll prove it yet. I've got documents. Okay.
And
Vote for Trump.
Another example is Satoshi Dice. So this was a gambling game that happened in late 2012, 2013, in that time range. And some of the mining pools considered this spam. So they would not process these transactions. Basically what this did, though, is this opened up a window where people could decide that they didn't to reverse losing bets. So what someone would do is they would make a Satoshi Dice bet. It would, after a first block, it would either be a winning bet or a losing bet. But about 5% of the time, these miners, they would not include these transactions just as policy. So when this happened, though, they would know if the bet was going to win or lose, but the bet wasn't finalized. So if they knew that they were going to win, they just let it ride. And if the 5% of this time, if they knew that they were going to lose, they would just decide to take their money back. So this would be like if you went to Vegas and if you...
This sounds like government.
Well...
All bad things do.
So this was just a quirk in the system that they weren't quite planning for, but it had to do with the miners doing things that weren't expected.
And so when you say the miners would do it 5% of the time, this was a regular thing they would do to prevent spam? Or why were they 5% of the time not processing the transaction? Was it in order to reverse these bets, or they were not processing these transactions anyway 5% of the time and then realized they could piggyback bet reversals onto it? You know what I'm asking?
So the miners had nothing to do with this.
Why did the miners, though, nonetheless, you said not process the transaction sometimes?
Oh, on principle.
To prevent the spam?
They considered this gambling on the blockchain spam, and they didn't want to have anything to do with it.
Oh, so it wasn't a regular thing. It was just an occasional but infrequent thing.
No, it was their morals were hurted.
Well, no, but I'm saying, like, so this happened infrequently, you're saying, and it was because some miners did not like the activity that was going on with those.
But here's the thing. So if your house has only a couple percent of spread in their favor, if you reverse that by 5%, now you are, instead of losing 2% of the time, you're winning 3% of the time.
Oh.
And you can empty a casino
pretty quickly like that. Yeah. That's a really good point. Interesting. Yeah, people forget like those the slim margins of winning sometimes or odds in favor can have big effects when you learn how to game the system like that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Just like with blackjack, you know, in theory, maybe this isn't the best analogy. In theory, you can beat the house 51% of the time. And if you have a good system like that, there's that famous guy who came up with that system, taught a bunch of people how to count cars basically. And that 1% was enough to make millions and millions of dollars. And that's really interesting. Okay. And so, kind of get that. So those are good analogies for what you're talking about, obviously. But is that precisely what you're talking about? Or if it's not, do you want to explain it one more time?
So this class of problems where the miners acting for their own purposes can cause other actors in the system to have unusual or undesired effects. So by Patrick Byrne setting up his own system, it kind of gets away from this undesired effects by people pursuing their own interests.
And just really quick, and just forgive my denseness, but you said that in this case, it would be if the Bitcoin price was less than the asset piggybacking on it, or what? Say it again. Explain it.
There's a critic of Bitcoin who calls this the top-heavy problem.
Who's the critic, out of curiosity?
Tim Swanson is the
Ron Swanson. Wow. Okay.
And he's
where does he live?
We'll find him, the arch enemy of the show. Well, real quick before you explain that, he's a general critic, like he doesn't like Bitcoin at all, or what is his?
He's a very smart guy, and he finds the problems that Bitcoin has. And every system has problems. Everything in engineering is about trade-offs.
But is he like anti-Bitcoin, or he simply is out there to find problems, which is great, to point out problems to be fixed? Do you see what I'm saying, though? I mean, does he think in general, like, he hates Bitcoin, or?
Well, he's in this space. His thesis is more, it's got a lot of problems, and you've got to think about them and apply them properly.
So maybe just as implemented, like he's not necessarily against the cryptocurrency and blockchain technology and that sort of thing. He just finds problems with the way Bitcoin has been, the protocol's been written and rewritten or implemented, that sort of thing. Or
that part of it I can't answer about his.
Well, anyway, we can learn more. Maybe we can have him on the show. That would be an interesting guy to have on. But let's get back. Sorry, I keep sidetracking us. But the top-heavy problem, as he calls it.
Yes. So if there's another theory that I won't go into that about the eventual future of what Bitcoin will be.
Ooh, why not?
Oh, well, okay, if you'd like.
Just real quick. So since we got 40 seconds anyway.
In the future, if Bitcoin is so incredibly valuable that it's the economies of nations are based upon it, it becomes in the nation state's interest in order to mine, not for any profit, but in order to deny foreign nations from having control over their citizens.
Huh. Interesting. Well, we'll talk more about that, as well as the top-heavy problem on the other side of the break with Brian Deere, Chief Scientist of Factum. We'll be right back.
I only have eyes for you. Soon, store mannequins may be singing that tune. They're being outfitted with cameras to watch us while we shop. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht, back with details after this.
Privacy is under attack. When you give up data about yourself, you'll never get it back again. And once your privacy is gone, you'll find your freedoms will start to vanish too. So protect your rights, say no to surveillance, and keep your information to yourself. Privacy, it's worth hanging on to. This message is brought to you by StartPage.com, the private search engine alternative to Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Start over with StartPage.
It's disturbing enough that big brother governments use facial recognition technology to identify and track people on the streets. Now clothing companies in Europe, Canada, and America are getting in on the act. So where do they hide the cameras? In the eyes of mannequins. That's right, those glamorous plastic ladies in the display windows may be watching you back. They're called eye seers, and their job is to log the age, gender, and race of passersby, so retailers can devise new schemes to get you to buy. But hang on, aren't mannequins spooky enough already? This is taking weird science to a whole new level. I'm Dr. Catherine Albrecht for StartPage.com, the world's most private search engine.
Actually be kidding about chemtrails.
Looking for some truth? You found it. LogosRadioNetwork.com.
I've been walking a tightrope between fact and fiction. Been wrestling with demons in small bottle prisons. Been talking to sinners who claim to be Christian, but shouting at leaders who claim to be listening. And the pendulum swings from the left to the right. As momentum increases, the need for the fight, like a moment of blindness and a lifetime of sight. And I am caught.
When they returned from Mexico, their bodies are not the only things they brought back. In fact, deep within Chris's stomach was a parasite waiting to destroy all of humanity. No, I don't know. Welcome back to the Crypto Show.
That's the dumbest intro I ever heard.
I know. I was trying to be clever and funny, like a movie. Well, I couldn't think of anything clever. That's the problem. That's why it's dumb, because it's not clever.
Okay.
Do you get it?
I get it.
Do you understand?
I do now.
No, but I was trying to think of, because I've had some a little bit of stomach issues since getting back. Almost certainly something not like really bad. No one wants to hear this. Oh my God.
While you were asleep, Hector injected you with something, but I
didn't even sleep the whole time. But I felt, maybe I nodded off at times briefly. But anyway, we're back.
Planning on harvesting your organs later this week, but
probably. I feel like something's going to like jump out of my stomach and maybe like land on Brian Deary's face. Okay. Anyway, back to the show. Brian, you were explaining to us, you said this hypothetical eventuality with Bitcoin. Explain it again. I'm a little dense tonight. You were talking about what mining power could do for governments. And anyway, explain it again.
Much like the civil war that's going on right now, how each side is fighting over it, and whichever miners are going to choose, whichever protocol is going to be chosen, the governments would do the same because the money is worth so much. They would then become miners and want to have a greater portion of mining power so that they can pick what the new protocol is going to be, so that they have pull or power over the people.
Is that what you're saying, or?
It's more of it'll be sold more as a defensive system. So let's say that China and Europe both have 50% of the network, or let's say China has most of it, like it does now. If the U.S. economy relies very heavily on Bitcoin continuing to operate in a fashion that is conducive to Americans, having essentially Chinese control over the American economy would be very scary for lots of people.
Right.
So much scary that they would be happy to burn lots of electricity in order to regain that control. And so this is kind of an arms race because both different sides wouldn't want to be under the thumb of the other nation.
Right, I see.
So
crypto bombs.
Yes. So you're either going to have one completely go crazy and spend so much money and completely take over the network, very much like the U.S. can spends as much
on military.
Yes.
So it's sort of a guns and butter kind of situation where, while of course you want to back up the Bitcoin system with mining power, at the same time, in order to wrest control of it from other countries, you're basically throwing a lot of economic resources behind it that could have been used for actual economic growth, but at the same time, you need the Bitcoin infrastructure there too. And you not just to run the system, but you need enough of it yourself so that the other side doesn't control it. Basically,
to use it against you.
Right. Well, no, this is simpler than I thought. Like, no, I understand what you're saying, because this is an argument I've thought of previously, not against Bitcoin. It's not, I don't want to put it that way, but as a potential weakness of Bitcoin. To me, it was always a consideration. Well, why
that sounds like a big waste of human time and energy.
Don't feed that. Don't feed that. Don't encourage him. No, but I'm most glad you said this, because like, this is not, it's like any system. Every system has its weaknesses, or not even weakness, situations like this, because that's just the nature of reality. But no, that totally makes sense, because I've wondered, why couldn't the government just buy up mining pools or secretly take them over behind the scenes? And people are like, well, we know about it because X, Y, Z, but you wouldn't know about it. And so in a similar fashion, maybe not so surreptitiously, you would have governments getting in the mining game for that purpose, basically to control the system, is what it sounds like. Yeah, so that totally makes sense to me. I see what you're saying. I just need clarification, because I wasn't sure where you were going with that.
Yeah, so where I was going was I see maybe two different things happening. One where there's either one that totally takes over and is a complete superpower and dominates everyone else, or there's a stalemate and basically like a Cold War where they share power, and it would take multiple other countries to overpower any individual country.
Right. And I guess, someone could say, well, they could always just abandon Bitcoin and go to some other cryptocurrency, but that would come at a huge economic cost, obviously, at least in the, how disorganized and disarrayed everything would be in transitioning over. But no, that's interesting. Yeah, I've always wondered about any scenarios people have thought of for eventual outcomes with Bitcoin when once power politics comes into it, like real power politics, once the states really get involved and, see which way the wind's blowing and try to compete with each other through Bitcoin. So that's really interesting.
I would imagine that the other altcoins will end up being the lower levels of money, and then Bitcoin would be a higher level.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. Like, in the same way that, there was gold, silver, and copper.
Like Bitcoin's the $1 million bill. All the rest are, pennies and dimes.
Exactly. Or I kind of thought of that when, I don't know if I brought it up but real quick, when we were still in Acapulco the last night, and we had Tom Vase on, and he was talking about how he envisions Bitcoin as being for large wealth transactions or transmissions versus little purchases, because obviously the little purchases are some of the things that are clogging the system, at least for the time being. And he saw it as that could eventually be solved, but for the time being, if anything, Bitcoin has been very good about, just transferring big wealth, not necessarily huge wealth, but, not million everyday transactions that are like $3. So my point is, aside from side chains and and other things that could help with that sort of stuff. You could also see people instead doing Bitcoin for the big stuff and then altcoins maybe for the small stuff. I mean, just as a possibility. What do you think, Brian?
So this comes down to more smart contract things. So smart contracts are more of a last resort. So let's say that you and I have a business relationship. We have a multi-sig transaction.
Are there donuts involved?
Let's say it's over the escrow of a donut fund.
Okay.
And so let's say that you don't deliver on the donut fund. And that's
no more donuts for you, buddy.
And the blockchain can know about this somehow using some Oracle system. A whole lot of hand waving there.
Well said.
But so both you and I would agree that there was a problem with the donuts, and then my deposit needs to come back because I didn't get any donuts. And both of us would know
you didn't get any donuts because Chris ate them.
We all understood what he was implying.
Okay.
Let him talk. No, I was kidding.
So both of us would know that if we disagreed, we could both take it essentially to court. We could take it to the blockchain, and the blockchain would execute the smart contract, and both of us would be worse off if we had to both take it to the blockchain. So we both agree that you should really give the money to me.
Wait, why would you be worse off if we took it to the blockchain?
Well, so to go into the blockchain, fees need to be paid.
Okay, so there'd just be a transaction cost.
And more complex things. Yes, it would be a transaction cost. So very much like when you have to go to court, you need to pay court fees and you need to pay lawyer fees.
So settling out of court, basically, there's an incentive to do it because of...
Exactly.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
So, but the incentive exists because the blockchain and i.e. the courts exist. And that keeps everyone honest and makes it more likely to settle out of court.
I like that. Okay, I think there's even like an economic term for this, but yeah, basically the sort of soft power, if you will, of Bitcoin, where it keeps people from having to even resort to it because there's the threat of the blockchain, basically deterring people from behaving badly. Interesting. Well, we'll talk more about that and some quantum computing stuff. Finally, on the other side.
Easy.
All right, guys, welcome back to the final segment of this episode's Crypto Show here on February 28th, 2016, a Sunday. Don't forget the Logos Radio Network.com. Nice. Fundraiser. Don't forget thecryptoshow.com/free Ross. Cool stuff you can purchase or bid on to help the Ross Ulbricht Appeals Fund. Don't forget Brave New Books at bravenewbookstore.com and the BitcoinBookstore.com. And don't forget our other sponsor, Hill Country Home Improvements. And don't forget Brian Deary, Chief Scientist of Factom. He not only makes Factom possible, but he makes a lot of our own personal understanding.
And our new ones. We have a new sponsor, too.
Who's that?
If you're tired of explaining Bitcoin or just want to know what Bitcoin is, no worries. Send your newbie friends to Bitcoin.com, the best source on the internet for experts and novices alike. With the latest news, uncensored forums, and all things Bitcoin in one location, Bitcoin.com does not welcome scammers, so you can trust your newbie friends to a safe source of information. Bitcoin.com is constantly evolving to make sure it's the most trusted source for Bitcoin information on the internet. That's Bitcoin.com.
Well, there you go.
That was really good. I do a good.
No, me and Roger struck a deal. We'll be running these ads, and he's running ads on his website for us.
That's awesome. Excellent. Thank you, Roger Ver, owner of Bitcoin.com. It's a great site. Check it out. Great commercial, Danny. Man, that was really well done. I know. It's like your lover whispering to you in bed next to you. Shh, I know. Anyway, all right. Doesn't welcome scammers. I know what that was a reference to.
Oh, yeah. BitClub. Did I call BitClub a scam?
I didn't say it.
I did.
But
I'm sorry.
Okay, well, anyway, let's go to something that's probably a scam. The NSA and quantum computing. You were missing this. There was an article that came out about some really weird announcement by the NSA. Tell us more, Brian Deary.
So apologies to our listeners. This is kind of late news, but it's I just stumbled upon it recently, and I think it's interesting. So last summer, the NSA made a really cryptic announcement.
Cryptic?
That they... where to begin? So there's a current class of cryptography called elliptic curves, and this is the cryptography that Bitcoin is built on. But there's been a lot of hand-wringing in the past few years about something called quantum computers. Now, there's still a ways out, but that basically makes if they become useful and workable in the future, which a lot of smart people think is possible.
I know they've demonstrated very simple quantum computers that have only like a handful of qubits, I think as they're called, basically where they've manipulated only a handful of atoms and done experiments and done tiny little computations. So it's even been in practice demonstrated on a very primitive level, from what I understand reading. But anyway.
Yes. And so Google's spending millions and millions of dollars throwing at this project. So smart people know that there's a lot of potential here.
And just real quick, sorry to interrupt, but as clarification, I'm sure a lot of our listeners don't need it, but some do. The potential for quantum computing is to crack the elliptical curve cryptography that Bitcoin is based on, basically, right?
Both RSA, which is the older style, and elliptic curve, which is the more newer style.
Okay.
Both of those are can be broken by quantum computing. Basically, what this means is all this data on us that the NSA has been collecting for years and years, even if it was encrypted and they don't know what it is. Let's say quantum computers become a real thing in 20 years. They can use this technology to go back and unencrypt all those web traffic, all those websites that you browsed that you thought was secret because it had that little green lock on it. Now is free for people with quantum computers to read.
Oh, no, they're going to know you to watch cat videos.
I know. Those kind of kinky cat videos, too. No, and, I never thought about this, and I know we don't have much time, but it never occurred to me that maybe the NSA is compiling all that data, that raw data, not because they have the technology to decrypt it or sift through it, because they're expecting to have it in the future.
Yes.
Like I don't know how that never occurred to me, but that makes total sense, and that's scary. Anyway, go on.
So they know that this technology is coming, and all the cryptography that the U.S. government uses is also based on these, what would be breakable encryption in a world of quantum computers. So last summer they came out with an announcement that basically said, if you're going to be spending any money on it to upgrade from the older style encryption to the newer style encryption, hold off on spending that money. Because in a few years, we're going to figure out this fixes to quantum resistant encryption. So basically what this means is, although quantum computers aren't available now, anything that you say now could be recorded and then decrypted in 20 years. And so secrets that need to stay secret for 50, 100 years, like some government secrets do, or they say they do at least, that those would become known in 20 years rather than 100 years.
Well, real quick, because to me it's peculiar that the NSA would make this announcement, because why would they want to warn the average person, especially when they're the ones who are likely to be the first to get this technology? And of course, maybe they're warning other people in government, but then I don't know. But what's interesting is that, when we talk about quantum computing doesn't exist yet, we don't know that it could. As far as we know in the mainstream, what is released from corporations and government, it doesn't exist. And I don't know. I have no proof that it does. Obviously, theoretically, it can. But what we know about government is they don't tell you their most advanced stuff. They're working on stuff that is way ahead of what is known to exist in the media, in common society. So for all we know, they either have it or this is their cue that within a few years they expect to have it. And that's terrifying. Why do you think they would make this announcement then?
So that's a good question. And some professional cryptographers basically went through and did some analysis. And they published a paper called A Riddle Wrapped in an Enigma.
They watch a lot of Batman.
Possibly.
Or they're fans of Churchill. But anyway.
And so this paper tried to go through and figure out, wait a minute, so they're recommending that we stay on the old stuff and not go to the new stuff. What does that mean? What do they think we're going to do if people tell us if they... And so they went through and did some analysis of some of the bureaucratic stuff that happened in the NSA. The NSA is actually, there are two different wings. So you've got the offensive and you've got the defensive wings. So you have the defensive wing, which develops strong cryptography in order to protect state secrets. And then you've got the offensive wing, which spies on foreign nations ostensibly.
I'm sure they do scrimmages together to test each other. But anyway.
And about early 2000s, 2001, I would say, the balance of power basically shifted very much away from the defensive branch. And so the leaders of the defensive branch of the NSA were basically either pushed out or promoted.
It makes sense, like William Binney
out of the way.
Was pushed out. Former technical director of the NSA, who was pushed out about the same time around 9/11. So that's interesting. And of course, he came out as a whistleblower. So anyway, that's just interesting connection. But go on.
So a lot of this, the newer cryptography was developed before this, which tends to believe that they actually had more of an interest in actually protecting the secrets rather than some of the really egregious things that they did after, where they took known broken stuff and pushed it on the American populace so that they could
access people's info. Yeah.
Yes. Even when they were thinking that it was secret.
Well, so what do you think then? Why are they, maybe I've missed it in what you said, but why are they encouraging people not to bother with the upgrade? Is it so that, have they cracked the old cryptography? So they're wanting as many people to remain on that as possible to get their info? Or
that might be part of it too. So there was another paper that was released a few months ago, which basically said that theoretically, if they tried hard enough, which was within reason of the budgets that they have, that the old cryptography can have been broken in today's times.
Even before quantum computing?
Even before quantum computing.
Really?
Yes.
That's terrifying. And of course, with quantum computing, it basically makes a brute force attack take like a fraction of the time, right?
Yes.
Because with quantum computing, because a particle can exist in two different positions, it basically sort of has a multiplier effect on how many calculations they can do, in essence, right?
I don't claim to understand it myself, but the experts are very scared.
Wow.
Did you see the memo about this?
Well, Brian did. I'm glad he did. And I'm glad he brought it to our attention. Well, real quick, because we got less than a minute, what's the paper called? Where can people find it?
So the paper is called A Riddle Wrapped in an Enigma. And you can find it at your local search engine.
Startpage.com. And that's, what's the actual announcement? Was there a headline or the article on it? Or did they have the memo that they issued?
And it was a government announcement. I don't remember the title.
Well, you get it from the paper. From the paper, yeah. Brian Deary, Chief Scientist of Factum. Thank you so much for being on the show. Sorry we didn't actually get to talk about Factum, but we talked about it with you many times. We'll talk about it with you again. And thanks for being on the show.
We're going to talk about Factum Wednesday.
Excellent. Can't wait.
Great.